Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we have quite a few updates coming from Goldshell, 3 in total, 2 are official, 1 is rumor mill. We have the full price now of the ALBox 2 Plus. We do have a new script ASIC coming from them, and then potentially another bigger Alephium ASIC coming from them as well. So we'll talk about the specs, we'll talk about what we found, and kind of give our thoughts on the 3 of these, okay? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get to this thing. So we will start off with the new script ASIC, which initially was very interesting. A rumor mill yesterday was that this thing was going to come in at this hash rate, but at 1,000 watts. But we did get confirmation today that that's not the case. The specs are actually going to be 3.4 gigahash at 1,800 watts. Okay, the 1,000 watt would have been on point. At 1,800 watts, not so much. So it is confirming that they are going to continue this 1,800 watt thing with the Echo series, which again, we gave our thoughts on the other one, just not a big fan of. But the price is going to be 2,000 bucks. So again, 3.4 gigahash, 1,800 watts. Not appealing at all whatsoever, in my opinion. Reason being is just repackaged trash, essentially, right? So you can get away with it when it's just one small little guy, because again, the efficiency doesn't compare with the bigger units, and that's the big downfall. When you're getting just one single unit, not the biggest deal in the world. Like even at 400 watts, let's say they released one that was twice as efficient as 200 watts. The difference in 200 watts in reality, not that big of a deal, right? So again, you're getting just one unit, you can get away with the lack of efficiency here. Once you scale up though, once you're paying for 1,800 watts, kind of a different story. So this is just a scaled up version of the Mini Doge 3. It's the same chips, almost identical efficiency, slightly different, but just easy eyeballing math. You would need 5 of these, right? 5 of these would bring you up to 3.5 versus the 3.4, and 2,000 watts versus the 1,800. So slightly different, not exact, but essentially the same, right? So when you compare with this guy at this price, because again, on the Goldshell website, this thing is twice as much, but this is the actual street price. So when you compare it with this price, it's pretty much on par. Again, 5 units brings you to 2 grand. This guy's 2 grand. This guy's arguably a better deal though, because it just has the PSU included, and it's just 1 unit, 1 PSU, much easier to set up versus having to get 5 PSUs for this thing. Although realistically, you would probably have less than that because you're going to power more than one off of a PSU, right? Just depending on your setup and the wattage, etc. But when you compare it to this guy, which is what they're going to, right? Because this is their newer unit. In this case, you would need 4 of these. 4 of these would bring you to slightly over 3.2, which is right under that 3.4. And then multiplying the wattage by 4, 1,600 versus the 1,800. So again, almost the same efficiency. The difference is 4 of these guys would bring you $3,200 versus the 2,000. So when you look at it like that, you can make the argument, but realistically, we know that this is the street price. We know that this guy should have never been this price. This guy should have been 450, maybe 500 tops. So that's why it's different. So this guy, do not be surprised to see it repriced to 500 bucks, which is kind of where it should be, maybe 550 in the high range. But realistically, again, if you're only getting one of these things, not the biggest deal in the world. Once you get to this point, especially this wattage, that's our biggest complaint, is once you hit this wattage, you're now hitting big boy units. It does not compare to even the L7, the DG1, DG1 Plus, and now even the L9, right? In terms of price, efficiency, density, nothing. Okay, it's extremely outdated. In my opinion, for the price, even if it was a drastic price, even if it was 1,000 bucks, I would just not be interested in it, right? It's just too inefficient. It's way too old to spend that kind of cash on this and to spend that kind of wattage on this, right? Especially with the competition, right? This is probably why they're trying to rush their Doge version out now, is because they know the AlphaPex unit is coming, the E-DG1M, which actually is efficient. It's 620 watts, so really is a home miner. And it's actually profitable, right? This is something that is kind of more in line in terms of efficiency with those bigger units. Is it as efficient as the L9? No, but it's at least in line with those. Okay, so at least at this point, you do have potential for making your money back as an investment, as being actually something here, especially at only 600 watts, right? It's, to me, I would not, again, even if they were to reduce this price, like, oh, we're going to do a fire sale, I would have zero interest in it. It's just way too damn inefficient. Okay, so very weird release. If this thing didn't exist, then I guess there could be a market for it, but this thing does exist. It is coming. Again, I would just have no interest in this guy, right? So kind of to each their own, but for me, it's definitely a no-go. Even looking at the current profitability, which again, we are in the bear market. Hopefully it does get better, but again, it's too inefficient, man. So currently, as it is right now at a 10-cent kilowatt hour, you'd be making about 89 cents for a miner that's $2,000. Considering what else you can get for $2,000 is just not right now. Maybe in the bull market, things are getting crazy. Maybe that's when they should have waited to release this thing, when things do kind of go up, because then at that point you could sell it to newbies because it's profitable, I guess, but it's just no, right? All kinds of no for me. On to the next one, and one that is much more promising, the ALBox 2 Plus. Okay, so the thing here is that they priced it accordingly. And this is kind of what we've just been wanting from Goldshell. Doesn't have to be spectacular, doesn't have to be, but at least be in line with the competition, which in this case they are for now, right? So the ALBox 2 Plus, it's 1 terahash, 480 watts, so not as efficient as the Ice River units, right? So realistically, it should be discounted because of that. The advantage here, though, it's 1 unit, PSUs included, so to some people that is something they want to see. Realistically, for me, I would rather have an external PSU, especially for something this low wattage, right? Things that are like 1,500 watts, 1,800 watts, 2,000, 3,000 watts, then yes, I do want that proprietary PSU because that's what it's going to be. But for something at this low wattage, something that I could handle with a server PSU, an ATX PSU, I would much rather use that, right? Me personally, I have a bunch of extras, and they're easy to obtain. You can go to Best Buy and get one, right? If this PSU goes down, you're kind of stuck having to get one directly from them. So some people see it as a benefit just for ease of use, a newbie coming in. For me, I would kind of view it as a negative, but if it's priced accordingly, then sure, why not, right? So at this point, again, it's 1 terahash, $1,700, right? So this is a limited price. They only have 30 units at this price. The price seems like it's going to be $1,800, which is still realistically isn't bad. Keep in mind, though, you order from Goldshell. If you're in the US, you're going to get hit with those tariffs. So you can use your reseller of choice. Nhash does have it at $19.99 shipped. So keep that in mind. When we look at the comparison, because the direct comparison would be with the AL0, right? Obviously, the AL0 is more efficient. That's why it's still, at the end of the day, more appealing for me. You would need 2.5 of these guys, right? So just doubling this price, the 849, 1,700 would only bring you to 800 gigahash versus here you're getting the 1 terahash, right? So if we were to price it accordingly, it would be, again, 2.5 of these, it would be $2,000, right? So it is priced accordingly. It does make sense. The efficiency isn't as efficient, but again, if you're only going to get a couple of units, in reality, are those couple hundred watts that big of a deal? Could be, maybe, maybe not, right? To me, it's not the greatest deal in the world. I would personally rather just have the more efficient unit. I would personally go with the AL0. I've had good success with them. That would be my pick. Would this ALBox 2 Plus be bad? No. I would definitely consider it, again, if you're on the small scale. Like for me, my only exposure to lithium ASIC mining is going to just be these small units. Okay, so I did get 4 of those AL0s. The reason I did get a few more is just that's going to be it for me personally, right? Realistically, we know the game that's going to happen here. We've seen it with Caspa. We've been following it for almost 1.5 years now. It's going to be the same thing here, right? And as a matter of fact, it's probably going to start here pretty soon is going to be my guess. And at this point, I'll YOLO early on with the little AL0s with the anticipation that if Alephium pumps in the next 3-4 months, maybe I can flip them and sell them for what I paid for them. Maybe, maybe not. Worst case scenario, they stay on that shelf stacking Alephium for 100 watts for this entire bull market, right? So we'll see how it plays out, but that's kind of the way I look at it. But Is this a bad price? Not at all, especially if you're also in the same boat where you just want to get a little bit of exposure, one unit, not too many watts. It's not bad, right? So kudos to them for at least trying, right? At least being competitive here. So this one isn't too bad. In terms of profitability, honestly, it's not even worth looking at these profit calculators because we know it's going to change pretty drastically here in the coming week. We know that retail is going to start getting their AL1s. The reseller batches of the AL0s are going to be coming out, as well as the ALBox 2 Pluses, whatever else comes out. So it's going to change very drastically. I would plan for at least your yield getting cut in half, right? Can Alephium pump and kind of like counteract it? Sure, but again, the focus here with these things should just be yield. Don't look at the fiat profitability, because just as easy as Alephium can, go up, it can easily go back down also, right? So the yield is what you want to focus on and what that yield may be worth in the bull market. That's where my focus is. Because again, with the AL0, I'm fully prepared for this thing to go down to making under an ALF here probably in the next month or so. And I'm fine with that. Again, I'm seeing my Alephium as being sometime in 2025, at least 10 bucks an Alephium. Okay, so even if it's half of an Alephium, I see that as $5 a day for something that's 100 watts. I'll take the risk, right? So kind of the other game plan is if things do pump in the next 3-4 months, maybe I can flip them, maybe I can stack whatever yield I get early on, because again, the advantage of getting these things early on is that you're going to make the most amount of yield now. Okay, the earlier the better, this batch or this first coming August 31st or September 10th batch, because after this point, I'm going to have zero interest in these little AL0s. Like, I don't want the AL0 Pro. I'll get in on this first batch, and that's going to be pretty much the extent for me, right? So you're going to make the most amount of yield now versus later. And also people are planning like, oh, next month it's probably going to cut in half. And it may be, but the yield is also going to be cut in half at that point also, right? So my interest is just going to be now, stacking whatever it stacks and going from there, right? So kind of to each their own. But if you were to get these things, again, I do have a discount code for these things, but just do not be surprised if the prices go down. Who knows? These next 2 months are going to be very pivotal, right? September is typically not too hot of a month, but at the end of the month, we may get rate cuts. We may get some bullish action. We may not. October, November are typically this stage of the market, this stage of the cycle, very, very good months. Will it happen? Won't it happen? We don't know. But again, it's going to be potentially a turning point here. Okay, so stuff to keep in mind there. So now on the rumor mill front, we have Mind the ASIC listed the Alephium version of these Echo Series units, the E-AL1M. They have the specs listed at 4.4 terahash at 1800 watts, which kind of makes sense, right? If we keep it in line with the ALBox 2 Plus, we know that it's 1 terahash. Eyeballing the numbers for these would bring you into the 1800 watt realm. So that would bring you about 4 terahash. So whether it's 4.4, if it is, it's going to be slightly more efficient. So that would be cool. But realistically, we're going to have to wait till the final specs. But give or take, it's going to be in this range. It's going to be about 4 terahash, about 1800 watts, right? Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but it's going to be in that range. The curiosity here would be what they price this thing at, right? Because by eyeballing it, again, if it's 4 of the ALBox 2s, it would bring you to, what, 1734, so about 6,800, so about 7,000 bucks. Will it be that aggressive? Will it be more expensive because they're going to get greedy because of this current profitability number and they're going to base it off of that? Are they going to go back to them old selves, or are they going to just be competitive? Is it going to come in at $69.99, $79.99? Because at this point, if we compare it with the AL0, it would be about 11 of those. 11 of those would bring you to the 4.4 if it is that. The difference here, though, would be the efficiency. And as you scale, it does get more noticeable because at this point, it would be 4.4 terahash coming from the Ice River units at 1100 watts versus the 1800 watts of this guy. So at that point, it does make a bigger difference as you scale. But again, 11 of these Ice River units would bring you to 8,800 bucks, right? So it would make sense for those to be more expensive as they are more efficient. Okay, so more than anything, it's just going to be curiosity to see if they're kind of learning their lesson and they price it accordingly, or they're going to go back to being greedy and price it based off of this, which we know it's not going to remain. Okay, so understand that at minimum, this is going to get cut in half in the short term. In the long term, it's going to continue to go down. Okay, but again, I would recommend focusing on the yield versus the fiat profitability, because the fiat profitability is going to change, especially if Alephium pumps. Whether it pumps or it dumps, it's going to change that drastically, which right now, considering the dump we're having, it's holding up very well. It's actually at $1.89. Okay, so don't be surprised to see it kind of go up to kind of help out with the hash rate, because the hash rate has been going up and it's been very volatile. It's been all over the place, and it's mainly because of Ampool, right? They're currently back up to 4 petahash, just Ampool alone, right? Yesterday, initially it went up that high, then it went back down to under a petahash. Now, ultimately, it's back up to this point. So the current hash rate is at 7.53, or the overall, 7.6. So give or take, it's in that range. Our prediction is once the E-AL1 came online, the reseller batches of the E-AL0s came online, and people got whatever gold shells they were going to get, we'd be at about 12 petahash, right? Which is looking extremely realistic, and it may actually be under. I wouldn't be surprised to just see it flat out double from here, right? Which, again, needs to be expected. It is going to go up. It's going to continue. Will the price be able to keep up with it to kind of match up and make up for it? I don't think it's going to be that aggressive over time. Yes, over time, again, small market cap, a lot of potential, and a lot of potential for the manufacturers to continually pump this thing and keep it going, because, again, they're going to be able to sell more ASICs that way. So a lot of things going in their favor where I think it is going to go up. Short-term wise, do I think it's going to go up to keep up with it? Maybe, maybe not, right? The bear market high is, what, like $3-4, somewhere around there. So is there potential for it to reach that point? Sure, right? Can it go beyond that? Of course, also. I would focus on the yield and what that yield, what you think it'll be worth in the bull market. Again, my more pessimistic prediction would be at least $10. That's what I'm basing my numbers off of. Realistically, I can definitely see it going potentially higher. Maybe it goes lower, but realistically, I think $10 is a pretty safe bet. And at that point, again, even if it's only stacking half of an Alephium after a month or two, I'm viewing that as $5 a day, right? Again, kind of to each their own, but for me, that's going to pretty much be the extent of my exposure to the mining. I was kind of debating on mid-tier units, but what I was kind of alluding to is that once this guy does officially get confirmed, do not be surprised for Ice River to make their announcement on their other units. Okay, currently they only have the EL0 announced. It is extremely likely they will have other units. To what extent, we don't know. Will they have a mid-tier, or will it just be a EL0 and a high-end model? We don't know. I fully expect them to at least have the big boy model and potentially a mid-tier unit. Do not be surprised that especially if these guys announce their pricing first and they do go on the greedy side, do not be surprised to see Ice River just like demolish that price point from day one. Like, just kind of like what we saw with the last announcement, where they pretty much announced it, I don't remember if it was that same day or the next day, and they just demolished that price point, right? And at this point, we know that those icy boys are not afraid of cutting those prices. Okay, so I do fully expect it. Will it happen? Won't it happen? We don't know. Maybe they'll be a little more conservative here. Maybe they'll just slightly undercut them. We don't know, but considering how aggressive those Caspa cuts were, at this point, nothing would surprise me, right? So just fully account for that. So like for me, we saw this battle. We've been following it super closely for the past year and a half between Ice River and Bitmain with those Caspa basics. We're going to see the same thing here, and now this time with 3 of them. Okay, so do I really want a big part in that with this limited amount of time leading into the bull market? Not really, right? Because for me, realistically, the strategy would be to wait a few months, let everything settle, let these prices continually potentially go down for those higher end units. Again, my eye would be on the higher end units once they reach a certain price point. But at this point, this kind of late in the market, realistically, I think it makes more sense for me to potentially most likely sit this one out, right? I was kind of waiting for a mid-tier unit, but it just seems too likely that once this thing gets announced, which is a mid-tier unit, the Ice River may come in and price aggressively, right? So at this point, it's like I'd rather just get some exposure on the small end with the AL0s, which realistically potentially may be some of the better ones, just because early on we know what's going to be best. It's going to be the yield. Yield is definitely going to be the best early on. Okay, you're going to make the most amount of alpha when you're early versus coming in later, right? Even if there is a better, more powerful model 6 months from now, typically the people who made out the best were on the zero, on the original models. Okay, will it play out? Won't it play out? Who knows? I'm taking that gamble potentially in 3-4 months. If Alephium pumps, I'll sell 2 of them. If I can get what I paid for them, cool. If not, I'll hang on to all 4 of them. They're just going to sit on that shelf stacking Alephium throughout this bull market, right? But for me personally, probably going to sit out the majority of this and just kind of watch from the sidelines, right? Maybe if prices get crazy, maybe those ASIC boys get super freaking crazy and they go super aggressive, then maybe, right? But currently it's just like a lot of volatility here, and you need to expect it, right? So whether you're considering the AL0s, the ALBox 2 Plus, one of these things, or those crazy bastards who are getting the AL1, expect just the halvings to happen. Not even, oh, a 10% price reduction. Do not be surprised to see a 30, 40, 50% reduction in these prices in the next month, in the next 2 months. Okay, because we know that hash rate is going to go up aggressively, especially if the price picks up, right? I know a lot of people are like, oh man, I want Alephium to pump. I would personally prefer the price to stay sideways or go down for a longer period of time, because that's going to give you more time to stack. If Alephium does pump in these next 2 months, if by November, let's say October is really good, by the end of October, by Halloween, Alephium's back to $4, $5, $6, what do you think is going to happen, right? They're going to make a ton of these units. A bunch of people are going to buy them because they're going to see the profitability charts, and that hash rate is going to move, right? So for me, the best case scenario is that Alephium does not pump. People kind of, not necessarily lose interest, but they're not super appealing. And we're able to stack a decent amount these next 3-4 months. Because again, with the AL0, any of the smaller guys, you're going to make the most amount of yield these initial few months. Okay, I know a lot of people are belly aching because they're like, oh man, I got to wait another 2 weeks to get my reseller batch. The hash rate's already elevated, so it's not like you're getting in early with Caspa, right? And a lot of people are like, oh man, it is going to make a big difference in 2 weeks. In my opinion, it's not. It's already going to be down at this current hash rate, probably down to 2 Alephium. In 2 weeks, it'll go down to 1 Alephium when the hash rate doubles, right? Again, over a 2-week span, you're missing out on 1 Alephium every day. 14 Alephium. Is 14 Alephium going to be a deal breaker for you, whether or not you bought the unit? Then all of people are saying, oh man, if I knew I was going to wait 2 weeks, I wouldn't have bought it. Being a little dramatic, right? Realistically, the 14 Alephium, if that was going to dissuade you, you bought it for the wrong reasons and you're going to get wrecked in your head anyway, right? Again, these are small, long-term plays to help you DCA, right? On the shortest term, maybe in 4 months, Alephium pumps and you're able to resell them, right? If you have a short-term play, that would be the short-term play. But you are not early like Caspa. You're not early like 4 months ago with the initial Goldshell ASICs. You need to kind of get that out of your head. I think that's a big thing that people really need to harp on, is that this is not like being early on Caspa. This is something completely different. The hash rate is already elevated. We're at 7 petahash already. Gonna be at like 14, 15 here pretty soon. Okay, so just make sure you fully understand that. If you're trying to get an AL0 or one of these ALBox 2 pluses, think that, oh yeah, I'm gonna be so early. You're early, but you're not that early where like a few weeks is gonna like make or break you, right? So with Caspa, that was the deal. We saw that there would be times where sometimes literally a month would make or break you. And I don't see that necessarily being the case here, right? So just make sure you're fully aware of that, fully understand that, understand what you're getting yourself into, and look at it from the long term, okay? So let me know what you guys think in the comments, guys. Are you guys digging any of these? Would you get any of these against the Goldshell, the script ASIC, straight trash? Maybe the ALBox 2 Plus. Again, this is not too bad, but again, don't be surprised if the prices go down. don't be shocked with that. As far as like the Echo, like this guy, I'm just curious to see what they price it at, right? So let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys think. Let me know actually what do you guys think this thing's gonna get priced at. Let me know your prediction there. Let me know your guess. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.